My fiancé cheated on me with my own mother just days before our wedding, but what I did shocked everyone. I thought I had the perfect life. Tyler and I were getting married in 3 days at Willowbrook Estate, complete with fairy lights and a reception overlooking the vineyard. Mom had been helping with every detail for months, staying late to arrange flowers and taste test catering. She seemed more excited about the wedding than I was, constantly gushing about how perfect Tyler was for me. The night before my bachelorette party, I stopped by Mom's house to pick up grandmother's pearl earrings. I had my own key and figured she'd be asleep by 10 p.m. like usual. Instead, I heard voices coming from her bedroom, male laughter mixed with Mom's distinctive giggle. I crept upstairs, thinking maybe she was watching late-night TV. The bedroom door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. What I saw made my stomach drop to the floor. Tyler was there, in Mom's bed, naked, with my mother wrapped around him like they'd been doing this for years. They were whispering about how excited they were to run away together after the wedding, about how I'd be devastated but would eventually get over it, about how they'd been planning this for 6 months, using my wedding as their escape route. They'd already found an apartment in Portland and planned to disappear during the reception at 9 p.m. Mom was stroking his hair the same way she used to comfort me as a child. Tyler said he never loved me anyway, that I was too predictable, too boring, that Mom understood him in ways I never could. They laughed about how naive I was, how easy it had been to plan this right under my nose. I discovered they'd been stealing from me too. Tyler had been transferring money from our joint savings account to an account with Mom's name, $47,000, including my inheritance from Dad's life insurance policy. They'd used my own money to plan their betrayal. I stood frozen in that hallway, gripping the doorframe so hard my knuckles went white. My entire world collapsed in real time. The man I was supposed to marry in 72 hours. The woman who gave birth to me, together, planning my humiliation while stealing my inheritance. I backed away silently and drove home in a daze. Sat in my car outside my apartment building until sunrise, trying to process what I'd witnessed. Part of me wondered if I'd imagined it. Maybe stress from wedding planning had finally driven me insane, but I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard, the casual intimacy, the detailed planning, the timeline extending months into the past and years into the future. By 6 a.m., I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of knowing I'd discovered their betrayal. Instead, I was going to let them think they'd gotten away with it. Right up until the moment I destroyed both their lives in front of 200 witnesses. The next morning, I called my cousin Rachel at 7 a.m. She was the only family member I trusted completely, 2 years older than me, fiercely loyal, and ruthless when someone hurt people she loved. I explained everything in a voice that sounded eerily calm considering my world had just imploded. Rachel listened without interrupting, then stayed silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, "What do you need me to do?" I spent the next 2 days moving through my normal routine like an actress playing a role. I smiled at Tyler when he texted about bachelor party plans. I hugged Mom when she brought over the final flower arrangements. I attended my bridal shower and opened gifts while everyone gushed about how lucky I was. Inside, I felt completely hollow, but nobody seemed to notice the difference. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal while they continued their charade. Tyler called me sweetheart and talked about our honeymoon plans. Mom fussed over wedding details and kept saying how proud Dad would be if he could see me getting married. Every interaction felt like swallowing glass, but I maintained my performance flawlessly. Secretly, I was preparing for war. First, I hired Bennett Investigations, a private detective firm Rachel recommended. I explained the situation to a woman named Detective Morrison, who specialized in infidelity cases. She looked disgusted when I described the family connection and immediately put her best surveillance team on Tyler and Mom. Within 24 hours, they had photos of Tyler and Mom having lunch at a cafe 30 minutes outside town, images of them touring apartments in Portland, audio recordings from directional microphones of them discussing their post-wedding timeline. They planned to disappear during the reception around 9 p.m., while everyone was dancing and drinking. Tyler would tell people he was stepping outside for air. Mom would excuse herself to the bathroom. They'd meet at Tyler's car and drive straight to the airport. Detective Morrison also uncovered the financial theft. Tyler had been systematically transferring money from our joint savings account to a new account opened under Mom's maiden name. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $800 there, but increasing as the wedding approached. They'd stolen $47,000 total, including the money I'd inherited from Dad's life insurance policy. The detective showed me bank records going back 6 months. Tyler had been planning this theft from the very beginning of their affair. Each transfer was timed to coincide with my work schedule, when I'd be too busy to check our accounts. He'd even used my own computer to make some of the transfers, logging in with my saved passwords while I was in the shower. Mom had already put her house on the market, telling neighbors she was moving to Colorado to be closer to Aunt Patricia. She'd been lying to everyone for months, playing the devoted mother of the bride while actively planning to abandon me on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The detective discovered they'd been meeting for 6 months, starting when Tyler offered to help Mom with some plumbing issues at her house. What began as innocent handyman work had evolved into an emotional affair, then a physical one, then a complete fantasy about running away together. They'd constructed an elaborate story about how their love was too powerful to deny, how I'd eventually understand and forgive them, how they deserved happiness after years of settling for less. I learned Tyler had been telling Mom lies about our relationship, that I was controlling and demanding, that I'd threatened to call off the wedding multiple times over trivial issues. that I'd been secretly seeing someone else and only marrying him for financial security. None of it was true, but Mom believed every word because it justified what she was doing. Meanwhile, Mom had been telling Tyler stories about my childhood that painted me as spoiled and ungrateful. How I'd always been jealous of her beauty and success. How I'd manipulated Dad into leaving everything to me in his will. How I'd never appreciated the sacrifices she'd made as a single mother. Again, complete fiction. But Tyler absorbed it eagerly because it made their betrayal feel righteous instead of cruel. What made everything worse was discovering the depth of their planning. They'd researched Oregon divorce laws to see how quickly Tyler could dissolve our marriage after the ceremony. They'd looked into changing their names legally. They'd even practiced their story about how they'd fallen in love after I'd supposedly cheated first. Every detail was calculated to minimize their guilt and maximize my humiliation. The private investigator uncovered text messages that made my blood boil. Mom describing how much she enjoyed lying to my face during wedding planning. Tyler laughing about how naive I was, how easy it had been to steal from our joint accounts without me noticing. Both of them mocking my excitement about the honeymoon they knew would never happen. In one particularly devastating exchange, Tyler told Mom that sleeping with me had become unbearable because he could only think about her. Mom responded that she felt sorry for me because I'd never experienced real passion, like what they shared. They discussed intimate details of my relationship with Tyler that he had no right to share, laughing about my insecurities and bedroom preferences. They discussed my reaction extensively. Mom predicted I'd have a complete breakdown and need psychiatric hospitalization. Tyler thought I'd become suicidal and probably try to hurt myself. They seemed to find my anticipated suffering amusing rather than concerning. In one recorded conversation, Tyler said my pain would be temporary, but their happiness would last forever. Detective Morrison also discovered they'd been scouting backup plans in case I found out early. Alternative escape routes, different cities they could flee to, ways to disappear completely if their Portland plan fell through. They'd prepared for every contingency except the one that actually happened. The most sickening discovery was their timeline for telling me the truth. They planned to let me go through the entire wedding ceremony, the reception, and our wedding night before revealing their affair. Tyler was going to wait until we were on our honeymoon in Tuscany to tell me he was leaving me for Mom. They wanted me to be as far from home and support systems as possible when my world collapsed. I spent hours reading through their communications, each message more devastating than the last. They discussed intimate details of our relationship that Tyler had no right to share. They laughed about my insecurities and fears. They planned their wedding night together while I was working overtime to pay for our ceremony. They'd even discussed having children together. Mom was 48 but wanted to try fertility treatments so she could give Tyler the family he claimed I wasn't ready for. The idea of my mother carrying my ex-fiance's child while I dealt with the aftermath of their betrayal was nauseating beyond description. Rachel helped me document everything methodically. We created folders organized by date, type of evidence, and legal relevance. Photos, audio recordings, financial records, text messages, emails, everything needed to destroy them completely. She also helped me research the legal implications of their theft and plan the most effective way to expose them publicly. The morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling strangely peaceful. The rage and devastation had crystallized into something sharper and more focused. I did my hair and makeup exactly as planned, following the timeline we'd rehearsed. I put on grandmother's wedding dress, the same one Mom had worn when she married Dad. I smiled for photos with my bridesmaids, posed for formal portraits, and let everyone fuss over how beautiful I looked. Mom arrived early to help with final preparations. She wore a navy dress we'd chosen together, and the sapphire necklace Dad had given her for their anniversary. She fussed over my veil, adjusting it perfectly while tears gathered in her eyes. The performance was Academy Award worthy. "My beautiful daughter," she said, squeezing my hands with what looked like genuine emotion. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Today is going to be perfect." I looked directly into her lying eyes and smiled. "Thank you for everything you've taught me about love and loyalty, Mom. I'll never forget these lessons." She had no idea what I meant, no idea what was coming. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler confirming their 9 p.m. meeting time, and she quickly hid the screen from me while pretending to check the weather. During the pre-ceremony photos, I watched Tyler and Mom interact with new awareness. The way he touched her shoulder when passing behind her chair, how she straightened his boutonniere with unnecessary intimacy, the secret smiles they exchanged when they thought nobody was looking. Their affair was hiding in plain sight, and everyone was too focused on the celebration to notice. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. at Willowbrook Estate. The setting was genuinely stunning. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an arch covered in white roses and greenery, the vineyard stretching endlessly in the background. Our guests arrived dressed in their finest clothes, chattering excitedly about the beautiful venue and perfect weather. At 3:30, I gathered my wedding party in the bridal suite. Rachel had everything organized. Printed copies of Detective Morrison's complete report, bank statements showing the systematic theft, enlarged photos of Tyler and Mom together, transcripts of their recorded conversations, a timeline documenting their 6-month affair, and copies of their escape plan. "I need you all to trust me," I told my 6 bridesmaids. "In about 30 minutes, this wedding is going to take a very different turn than any of us expected. What I'm about to tell you will be shocking, but I need you to stay calm and follow my lead." I explained everything quickly and efficiently. Several of my bridesmaids started crying. My maid of honor Jessica looked ready to commit murder. My youngest bridesmaid, Emma, asked if this was some kind of terrible joke, but they all agreed to support whatever I had planned, even though they could barely process what they were hearing. Rachel distributed folders to each bridesmaid containing portions of the evidence. They would help spread the documentation throughout the crowd during my announcement. We synchronized our watches and reviewed the plan one final time. Each bridesmaid knew exactly where to position herself and which guest to target with the evidence. I walked down the aisle to Cannon in D, just as we'd rehearsed. Dad wasn't there to give me away. He'd died when I was 22, so I walked alone, carrying his photo attached to my bouquet. Tyler stood at the altar beaming like the happiest man alive, surrounded by his groomsmen who had no idea their friend was a lying thief. Mom sat in the front row wearing her perfectly applied makeup, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief like the devoted mother she'd never actually been. As I approached the altar, I caught Tyler's eye and smiled. For just a moment, his confident expression flickered. Maybe he sensed something different about me, some change in my energy. But then I was beside him, and he took my hands in his lying ones, and the ceremony began. The officiant, Reverend Martinez from our family church, began the ceremony with his usual warmth and dignity. He spoke about love, commitment, trust, and the sacred bonds of marriage, about how marriage was built on honesty and mutual respect, about how the families joining today were celebrating not just a union between two people, but the beginning of a new chapter in their shared story. The irony was suffocating. Every word about trust and commitment felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But I maintained my composure, knowing that in a few minutes, everyone would understand exactly why these concepts mattered so much. When we reached the vows section, I took the microphone from Reverend Martinez. Tyler looked slightly confused but kept smiling, probably assuming I'd planned some romantic surprise. His groomsmen exchanged amused glances, thinking I was about to do something adorably sentimental. "Before we exchange rings," I announced to the crowd, my voice carrying clearly across the vineyard, "I have something important to share with everyone who came here today to celebrate what they believed was a union built on love and trust." Tyler's face went white. The confident grin disappeared instantly, replaced by the expression of someone who just realized they were standing on quicksand. Mom started to stand up, but Rachel was already moving toward the front with a thick folder in her hands, flanked by my other bridesmaids carrying additional evidence. 3 days ago, I discovered that my fiancé Tyler and my mother have been having an affair for 6 months. They've been planning to run away together tonight at 9 p.m., leaving me to explain to all of you why they disappeared on what was supposed to be our wedding day. The church erupted. Gasps, shocked murmurs, someone's elderly aunt loudly asking what I'd just said because she couldn't hear properly. Tyler started stammering some desperate denial, but I held up my hand for silence. The crowd quieted immediately, hanging on every word. Tyler has systematically stolen $47,000 from our joint accounts to fund their escape. This includes money I inherited from my father's life insurance policy, money that was supposed to help us build our future together. Instead, they've been using it to plan their betrayal of me. I nodded to Rachel and my bridesmaids, who began distributing copies of the evidence to guests throughout the crowd. Photos passed from hand to hand like wildfire. People's faces transformed from confusion to horror to rage as they absorbed what they were seeing. Conversations Tyler and Mom thought were private, now printed in black and white for everyone to read. The photographs were particularly damning. Tyler and Mom kissing in restaurant parking lots, holding hands while apartment hunting, embracing outside hotels. The timestamps showed the progression of their relationship alongside my own wedding planning timeline. Each photo was accompanied by metadata showing exact dates and locations. But they didn't just steal my money and my fiancé, I continued, my voice getting stronger with each word. They planned to let me go through this entire ceremony, our wedding night, and our honeymoon before telling me the truth. Tyler was going to wait until we were in Italy, thousands of miles from home, to inform me he was leaving me for my own mother. The crowd's horror deepened. Several women were openly crying now. Men were shaking their heads in disgust. Tyler's own relatives looked mortified. The revelation that their plan included letting me go through the wedding ceremony made their betrayal even more cruel. Mom tried to run toward the exit, but my Uncle David stepped in front of her, his face dark with fury. She collapsed back into her seat, burying her face in her hands while her shoulders shook. Whether from shame or fury, I couldn't tell and didn't care. Tyler's best man stepped away from him like he was radioactive. Tyler's own mother, sitting in the second row, stood up and slapped him across the face so hard the sound echoed across the vineyard. The impact left a red handprint on his cheek that would be visible in every photo from that day. Tyler's father grabbed his son's arm and hissed something that made Tyler flinch visibly. Whatever he said, it clearly wasn't supportive. One by one, Tyler's groomsmen distanced themselves from him, their expressions ranging from disgust to complete bewilderment. "The evidence speaks for itself," I said, gesturing to the papers circulating through the crowd. 6 months of planning, detailed escape routes, financial theft, and text messages where they mock my trust and laugh about my anticipated pain. They thought they were smarter than me. They thought they could use my own wedding as cover for their betrayal. "I have something else to announce," I continued, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around me. "This wedding is obviously canceled, but the reception will continue as planned, because I've already paid for it, and the vendors deserve compensation for their work. Consider it a celebration of truth, justice, and the importance of finding out who people really are before you legally bind yourself to them." I turned to Tyler, who was trembling now, his face pale and sweaty. Sweat stains were visible under his arms despite the cool October weather. "You wanted to disappear with my mother after stealing my inheritance?" Congratulations. You're both going to disappear from this community forever. Every person here now knows exactly what kind of people you are. Every business owner, every potential employer, every neighbor, every church member. Your reputations aren't just damaged, they're completely destroyed. To Mom, I said, my voice getting colder with each word. You taught me that family means everything. You were right. Family does mean everything. Which is why what you've done isn't just betrayal. It's the complete destruction of everything sacred about the relationship between a mother and daughter. You didn't just steal my fiancé. You stole my ability to trust, my sense of safety, my belief that the people who are supposed to love me actually do. The crowd was completely silent now, absorbed in this real-life drama unfolding before them. Several people were recording everything on their phones. The evidence continued circulating, with gasps and expressions of disgust following its path through the guests. I turned back to face the crowd. To everyone who came here today expecting a celebration, I'm sorry this turned into something else entirely. But I'm not sorry for exposing the truth. These two people spent months lying to my face, stealing my money, and planning to humiliate me in front of all of you. They thought they were smarter than me. They thought they could use my own wedding as cover for their escape. They deserved to have their shame witnessed by everyone whose opinions matter to them. The applause started slowly, with my cousin Rachel clapping deliberately. Then Jessica joined in. Within seconds, the entire crowd was applauding. Not polite golf claps, but genuine appreciation for what I'd just done. Several people stood up, then more. Soon the entire congregation was on their feet, giving me a standing ovation. I walked back down the aisle alone, still in my wedding dress, my head held high. The applause followed me all the way to the reception hall, where the band was setting up and the catered dinner was waiting. Tyler and Mom fled during my walk to the reception. They literally ran to Tyler's car, Mom's heels clicking frantically on the pavement as she struggled to keep up. Several guests took photos and videos of their desperate retreat, which later circulated on social media with captions about karma and justice. Tyler's car wouldn't start immediately. The engine turned over several times before catching. During those agonizing seconds, they sat trapped while 200 wedding guests watched their humiliation through the windows. When the engine finally started, Tyler peeled out of the parking lot so fast his tires left rubber marks on the asphalt. At the reception, I gave a toast with a glass of champagne that should have been celebrating my new marriage. Instead, I talked about the importance of knowing who people really are before trusting them with your heart, your future, and your bank account. About how sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept betrayal quietly. About how truth, even when it's devastating, is always better than living a lie. The reception turned into something I never could have planned. Guests shared stories about their own experiences with betrayal and recovery. Several people approached me with job offers and business opportunities. Tyler's cousin apologized for her family member's behavior and slipped me her contact information in case I needed anything. The mood was supportive, almost celebratory, like everyone was relieved to see justice served so publicly. The band, initially confused about whether to play wedding music for a canceled wedding, ended up creating an impromptu playlist of empowerment songs. When they played I Will Survive, the entire reception sang along. It became a moment of collective catharsis that I'll never forget. The private investigator's evidence went to the police the next Monday. Detective Morrison personally delivered the files to Detective Rodriguez at the Financial Crimes Unit. Tyler was charged with theft, fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft for opening accounts under false pretenses. The district attorney was particularly interested in the case because of the family relationship and the systematic nature of the theft over 6 months. Tyler's lawyer tried to argue it was a civil matter between engaged couples, but the DA pointed out that stealing inheritance money crossed very clear criminal lines. The fact that he'd used Mom's maiden name for the secret account constituted identity fraud. The systematic transfers over 6 months proved premeditation rather than impulse. The criminal case made local news, which brought additional scrutiny to both Tyler and Mom. Tyler's employer, a small investment firm, fired him immediately when the charges became public. They couldn't have someone handling client money while facing theft charges. His professional licenses were suspended pending the outcome of the case. Mom lost her nursing license when the state board reviewed her moral character following the criminal charges. 23 years of building a respected career, destroyed because she couldn't resist seducing her daughter's fiancé. The board's ruling specifically mentioned her violation of trust and ethical standards that extended beyond her professional life into her personal conduct. The nursing board hearing was brutal. 3 colleagues testified about Mom's previous complaints regarding unprofessional behavior with male doctors. Her supervisor revealed that Mom had been written up twice for inappropriate comments about patients' family members. The pattern of boundary violations that culminated in her affair with Tyler convinced the board she was unfit to maintain her license. Tyler and Mom's relationship lasted exactly 2 more months after they fled to Portland. Turns out, when you build a relationship on lies, betrayal, and mutual self-justification, it doesn't have a strong foundation for weathering actual adversity. They turned on each other quickly once the fantasy collapsed and real life set in. Tyler blamed Mom for seducing him and destroying his reputation. Mom blamed Tyler for being weak and dragging her down with him. They fought constantly about money, housing, and whose fault their situation was. The passionate love affair that justified destroying my life turned into bitter resentment and mutual hatred. Their fights were legendary, according to neighbors in their Portland apartment complex. Screaming matches that lasted hours, thrown objects, police calls for domestic disturbances. The couple who thought they were destined for eternal happiness couldn't stand each other once they faced real consequences for their actions. Their breakup was as dramatic as their affair. Tyler came home from his gas station job to find Mom had packed everything and disappeared with what little money they had left. She'd moved in with a man she met at her janitorial job, someone even more desperate and broken than she was. Tyler was evicted 2 weeks later and ended up sleeping in his car. I moved to Denver 6 months later and used the money I recovered through criminal restitution to start my own event planning business, specializing in weddings, actually. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I learned more about what makes relationships strong and what destroys them than most people learn in a lifetime. My business thrived because I could help couples build celebrations based on genuine love and trust rather than fantasy and lies. My first client was Tyler's cousin Emma, who hired me specifically because of how I'd handled my own wedding disaster. She wanted someone who understood the importance of authenticity and wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. That wedding was featured in a major bridal magazine, which launched my business into the luxury market. Word spread about my story and my business philosophy. Couples sought me out because they wanted someone who valued honesty and had experience with relationship red flags. I developed a reputation for being able to spot potential problems before they destroyed weddings or marriages. 3 years later, I married David, a man I met when he hired me to plan his sister's wedding. He thinks honesty is the most attractive quality a person can have. Our wedding was small and private, just immediate family and close friends. No drama, no betrayal, no stolen money, just two people who actually love and respect each other making a genuine commitment. David knew the whole story before he proposed. I'd been completely honest about my past, my trust issues, and my zero tolerance for deception. He said my strength in handling the situation was one of the things that made him fall in love with me. Our relationship was built on transparency from day one. Our wedding was everything Tyler and I had planned, but better because it was real. David wrote his own vows about how my honesty and strength inspired him to be a better man. I wore grandmother's earrings again, but this time they represented genuine family love and support rather than stolen symbols. Last month, I heard through mutual friends that Tyler is working the night shift at a 24-hour gas station outside Portland. Mom cleans office buildings for a janitorial service. They live in separate studio apartments and hate each other, but can't afford to move away from the area where they both have minimum wage jobs. Tyler's family disowned him completely. His parents returned every gift he'd ever given them and changed their will to exclude him entirely. His younger sister won't speak to him. His professional reputation in finance was destroyed when the criminal charges became public record. He'll never work in banking or financial services again. Mom's situation is even worse. Her sisters cut off all contact after learning what she'd done. The church where she'd been a member for 15 years asked her to leave. Former friends crossed the street to avoid speaking to her. The small town where she'd lived her entire adult life became impossible to navigate because everyone knew what she'd done. Tyler tried to contact me once, about a year after the wedding disaster. He sent a long email full of apologies and excuses, claiming he'd been confused and manipulated. He said he realized he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and wanted a chance to make amends. I forwarded the email to Detective Rodriguez and blocked Tyler's address. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Mom has never tried to contact me directly, but she's reached out through relatives several times, always with the same message, that I'd overreacted, that families should forgive each other, that I was being cruel by maintaining no contact. My response through intermediaries has always been the same. She made her choice when she decided to betray me, and now she has to live with the consequences. Sometimes people ask if I regret exposing them so publicly instead of handling it privately, if I think I went too far by destroying their lives in front of 200 witnesses. The answer is always no, for several reasons. First, they planned their betrayal in private while lying to my face for 6 months. They stole my money, my trust, my sense of safety, and my belief in family. They planned to humiliate me on my wedding day by disappearing together, leaving me to explain their absence to everyone I cared about. They deserve to have their shame witnessed by everyone whose opinions mattered to them. Second, handling it privately would have allowed them to control the narrative. They could have spun the story any way they wanted, probably painting me as the villain who drove them together. By exposing them publicly with documented evidence, I ensured the truth would be known. Third, their betrayal wasn't just personal, it was financial and criminal. They stole money that belonged to me, including my inheritance from Dad. That's not something you handle privately with family therapy and forgiveness circles. That's something you report to the police and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. The best part about what I did is permanent. Every time someone in our old community sees their names on social media or hears them mentioned in conversation, they remember exactly what kind of people they are. There's no starting over for them, no clean slate, no redemption arc. Their betrayal is part of their permanent record in the minds of everyone who knew them. Some people say I should have been the bigger person, that I should have handled it with more grace and dignity, that exposing them publicly was cruel and unnecessary. But being the bigger person often just means being a doormat. Sometimes justice requires making sure the people who hurt you face real consequences for their actions. Grace and dignity are concepts that work both ways. If you want grace, you have to behave gracefully. If you want dignity, you have to act with dignity. Tyler and Mom forfeited any claim to gentle treatment when they chose to betray me in the most intimate way possible while stealing my inheritance. My wedding day didn't give me a husband. It gave me something more valuable. The knowledge that I'm strong enough to stand up for myself even when it means standing alone in front of 200 people and setting my old life on fire. It taught me that I won't accept betrayal quietly, that I won't pretend to be okay when I'm not, and that I won't protect people who hurt me from the consequences of their choices. The woman who walked down that aisle expecting to marry Tyler was naive and trusting. The woman who walked back up it alone was someone completely different, stronger, wiser, and absolutely certain of her own worth. That transformation was worth more than any marriage could have been. 5 years later, I can honestly say that discovering their affair was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because betrayal is good, but because it forced me to become the person I was meant to be. Someone who doesn't accept less than she deserves. Someone who fights for herself. Someone who refuses to live a lie. And honestly, destroying their lives in front of everyone they knew was the most empowering moment of my entire existence. I regret nothing.